Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're a brand new subscriber or a brand new viewer. My name is Kyle. So, No Time to Die, or Bond 25, is coming out in 3 weeks at the time I'm recording this review. So in order to prepare for that, I like to talk about Daniel Craig's first 3 outings as James Bond. Now, I've already reviewed the movie Spectre, and I have honestly said everything that I think I should say about that movie. So if you'd like to check out my review, I will have the little link above so you can click it and check it out. And what I'd like to do here is to not just review these 3 movies, but I'd like to tell you guys my personal experiences watching them for the first time, my thoughts on them, how they might have changed. So without further ado, let's jump into Casino Royale, which came out in the year 2006, directed by Martin Campbell, starring Daniel Craig in his first outing as James Bond. And interestingly enough, for the plot of this movie, James Bond has just received his 007 status, so he is a rookie. And this is his first mission, and that mission is to take down a man named Le Chiffre, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who set up a high-stakes poker game at Casino Royale in Montenegro after one of his deals fails. Along the way, he is teamed with a woman named Vesper, who is a member of the Treasury, who tells him that if he loses, their government will have directly financed terrorism. And all the while, M, played once again by Judi Dench, wants to make sure that she can trust Bond and that he knows who to trust. I was too young to see Casino Royale in theaters, so the first time I watched it was when I was 9 years old. Quantum of Solace was about to come out. It hadn't been released yet. But I watched all the James Bond movies in sequential order leading up to Casino Royale. And the next sentence I'm going to say will definitely surprise some people because I have to be brutally honest here. When I first saw Casino Royale as a kid, I didn't like it. I think at the time I just wasn't ready for a dark and serious Bond. 13 years later, I am, of course, kicking myself repeatedly because this movie is fantastic. It is such a great James Bond movie, but also a great film in and of itself. This movie was directed by Martin Campbell, who previously helmed the Bond movie GoldenEye, which came out in 1995, one of my all-time favorites of the franchise. I have the poster of it above me. I love that movie. It's a fantastically directed movie. What I love about Martin Campbell is that he rebooted the franchise not once, but twice. And both times, he understood who the character was and also what was needed in order to appeal to a new audience, to a new demographic. In the case of Casino Royale, this was definitely during the post-9/11 era. And without a doubt, the opening scene to this movie definitely tells its audience, this is going to be a different 007 immediately. It wastes no time showing you how gritty this movie is going to be. And this is the first time I'll say this, and not the last time, but this opening scene pushes that PG-13 rating. It is brutal. Something that became a recurring mindset to me watching this movie is just how well they both show and tell what's going on. In the opening sequence, we find out that Bond has not received his 00 status, and that requires him killing 2 people. And in the opening scene, he kills 2 people, thereby obtaining his 007 status. It's a great way of simply allowing the story to lead to the action, and that is one of the best aspects to Casino Royale. After the opening credits, we get introduced to Le Chiffre, played by Mads Mikkelsen, and Mads Mikkelsen, in general, is an unbelievably talented actor. He has such an incredible range, and what I really like about him in this movie is the fact that he's not your typical Bond villain. If he was to try to go toe-to-toe with Bond, Bond would punch him into the next week in a second. He has to use an inhaler, for God's sake. But what I really like about Le Chiffre is that he's able to challenge Bond intellectually. He is a smart and capable person. The following scene in this movie is the best chase scene of the whole Bond franchise. The Parkour Chase is honestly a thing of beauty. It is one of the most rewatchable sequences I've ever seen in a movie. The 2 things I love most about this scene is, first and foremost, the camera work. There is not a single moment of shaky cam in this sequence. You can always comprehend every action and reaction that's going on, which is how the best of the best action movies are directed, of course. But the second thing is the more personal thing, and that deals with Daniel Craig himself. He stated that he wanted the character of Bond in this movie to be very flawed. And that makes sense because he is essentially a rookie. So he's going to make mistakes. With both the chase scene and all of the fight scenes in the movie, none of them are easy for Bond. They are all very, very challenging. He's up against opponents who are more trained, more skilled than he is, but he's able to improvise and use his wits, and that is the 007 that we all know and love. Now, alongside of him being a flawed character and making mistakes, he is also reckless. Reckless to the point where he storms illegally into an embassy, apprehends the man he was chasing, and then kills him a minute later. Now, despite him being reckless and flawed, he is a good agent, and more importantly, he is a good detective. And the way Casino Royale handles this is a way that no other Bond movie really has done it before. When he ventures to the Bahamas, and by the way, I have to also state that the score to this movie by David Arnold is amazing. And we get to see another skill of Bond during the sequence, and that is his charm. The fact that he gets out of his car, and two women that have never seen him before look at him as if he is the next god is amazing. And what I love about that is that's shown visually. So after he goes and checks out the security footage, we get to witness that soft-spoken charm that he has. It really does a great job of assembling all of the pieces that make the character of 007 work, even though he hasn't proclaimed his name Bond James Bond yet. And the next scene of the movie involving the card game exemplifies another trait of Bond, which is skill. Because not only does he win the game, which involves him winning the money, he's also able to take Demetrius, the man he's chasing after, his car, and then he takes his woman and he makes out with her. That definitely has that sort of 007 feeling that we're used to. And rewatching this movie, which I hadn't seen it in quite some time, this moment was the first moment in my head that I was like, wow, this is huge. Is when Bond picks up the phone and says, alright, I want to order a thing of caviar and champagne. The guy on the other end says, for two? Bond says, no, for one. And without further ado, he leaves her. Unfortunately, the next scene is my least favorite part of the movie, and that's the killing of Demetrius. I think the idea of Bond simply just looking up, and then Demetrius is like, whoa, what's that? And then he gets stabbed. To me, rewatching it, I thought that was stupid.
What an idiot.
My least favorite part of the movie is short-lived, however, once we come to the airport chase scene. This sequence is, again, amazing. All the action sequences in this movie are fantastically directed. And this particular sequence is where I'd like to talk about the director of photography, Phil Meheux. I remember seeing an interview with him talking about the importance of coverage. There's never any bit of confusion during this scene whatsoever. You can always comprehend what's going on. And that's also thanks to the editing of the film as well. The first act of Casino Royale definitely has incredible action, and the second act, though it slows down, it doesn't feel slow. We have more intimate character moments, especially with the introduction to Vesper Lind, played by Eva Green. She is fantastic in this movie, and in the first 5 minutes, she proves why she is the best Bond girl of all the Bond girls. The chemistry they share throughout the whole movie is great because at one point, they don't really like each other. They don't get along with each other. But when they get romantic, they spend an entire hour of the film's runtime together. So you really establish the fact that they are reliant on one another, just in ways they weren't expecting. So of course we come to the infamous poker sequence in the movie. Now, when I was a kid, I was kind of bored by these sequences because I had no idea what they meant. I didn't know how to play Texas Hold'em. Now, of course, that I'm older and I do know how to play, these sequences make perfect sense to me. And of course, during this scene, I have to talk about Bond's drink of choice. I like the fact that when he orders one, everybody around him is like, you know what, I want one. Yeah, I want one. I want one. He's already won over the table within the first minute of showing up. That is Bond right there. The introduction to the character of Mathis is really good, but we also get the introduction of Felix Slater, played by Jeffrey Wright, who Jeffrey Wright can enter any role and play him to the best of his ability. I love him as Felix Slater. The chemistry he has with Daniel Craig, despite the fact that they share very little screen time together, is great. However, the action does not stop, and this is where I want to talk about the stairwell fight, which is, in my mind, the best part of the entire movie. This sequence is absolutely riveting, not just because of the fight, but what comes directly after the fight. He's seen cleaning the blood off himself, drinking very hard liquor, and looking at himself into the mirror thinking, what in the hell am I doing? This is, to me, the best sequence in the entire movie. We have never seen a sequence like this in a Bond movie up until this point or since. It's such a realistic, dramatic moment without ever feeling over the top, and there's not one line of dialogue that's spoken. It's all based on Daniel Craig's facial expressions. He really is a great actor, and his performance in this movie is genuinely great. And the following scene of him coming to Vesper when she's sitting in the shower, she originally was supposed to be in her underwear, but Daniel Craig suggested otherwise. And through this, we get a great moment because there's no nudity to be exploited. Yes, Vesper wears revealing outfits, but this is such a great moment because you feel their chemistry, you feel the tenderness during this scene. It's just great stuff. The sequence where he got poisoned was terrifying for me as a kid. I remember the first time seeing it, just being like mortified watching it. I had never seen a sequence quite like that, so it was quite jarring as a kid. And even watching it now, it's terrifying. And if it weren't for Vesper, he would have been dead. So it's proof that both characters are very useful to one another, just in different scenarios. So Bond returns to the table.
I'm sorry. That last hand nearly killed me.
That line is amazing in the film. He, of course, then wins the game, which is amazing. And, of course, he passes the dealer $500,000. That's another really great moment in the movie. Just a very small little moment, but it definitely is worth the 2 seconds it's on screen for. Now, sooner or later, we were going to have to get to the torture scene in Casino Royale, which is one of the most disturbing and unnerving scenes I've ever seen in a movie, period. This scene is just as haunting today as it was for me seeing it as a 9-year-old kid. Now, I wanted to wait until this point in the review to really talk about Mads Mikkelsen because his character of Le Chiffre, as I stated earlier in the review, if he went toe-to-toe with Bond, he would have knocked him into the next week in 2 seconds flat. But what I really like is that in this scene, Le Chiffre is just as scared, if not more scared, than Bond is. I like during this moment that Daniel Craig shows this sign of fear because he's completely naked in a ship, nobody can reach him, they took out the tracking device, he is all alone. So there's a great moment of silence and you just hear his audible gasps. It's fantastic right there.
Now the whole world's gonna know that you died scratching my balls.
But with Le Chiffre, he lost over $100 million of money that was supposed to fund an entire network of terrorists. And yet another thing that Casino Royale did, which no other Bond movie has done, is showcasing the fact that Bond does not kill the villain. Mr. White comes in and does that for him. You're realizing that Le Chiffre is not really the main villain. It's whomever killed him. But you don't know that his name is Mr. White at this point in the movie. You just saw him at the very beginning of the film, so your mind is kind of connecting the dots, but you don't know who he is, who he works for, what he represents. So it makes this scene even more terrifying than it already is. So this leads us to the third act and eventual ending of the movie, and that really is the romantic edge between Vesper and Bond. As I stated, Daniel Craig and Eva Green had spectacular chemistry for the first hour where they started hating each other, but they realized they had a dependency on one another. And the fact that he falls in love with her and is willing to give up his career for her is a gigantic move. And it does represent his naivete when we discover that she betrays him. But the one thing that was always curious to me, and on rewatch I was kind of curious and I feel like I figured out what was going on, was the fact that she wears the brightest red dress imaginable so that Bond can literally spot her amongst the thousands of people in Venice, Italy. But thinking about it after the fact, I believe she wanted him to find her. The fact that she wore this very bright red dress, she wanted to be found. This leads to the final action sequence in which we literally see a building coming down in the process. Now I know that there's no way that they just destroyed a building in Venice, Italy, but the way they shot it was remarkable. So the movie basically ends with Vesper dying, and a part of 007's soul has been taken from him, and you can see that in his angered look after trying to resuscitate her. The final conversation between M and Bond in this movie is great because in this movie it wraps up what she was wondering at the beginning of the film, and of course in Quantum they mess with it again. But when we get to that movie, we'll get to it. But that final conversation is great, particularly when Bond says, "The bitch is dead." That is the last line from Ian Fleming's book of the same name. And then we have the scene in which Daniel Craig reveals who he is.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
So upon rewatch, this movie is excellent. Casino Royale embodies so many of the great traits of the character we all know and love, but we get to see him slowly and gradually obtain all of those things to become Bond James Bond. The action sequences, as I stated, are all excellently directed. The film has such an elegance to every single scene, even the most brutal ones, because we can see what's going on. The script is great, and it allows for all of the actors to give their very best performances. Every single character in this movie is well defined. The editing is sharp, and the pacing of the movie is great. I remembered it being slow when I was younger, and despite this being a long movie, it is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, whenever the film has to be fast, it is fast, but it's never too fast. And when the film is in its more slow and intimate moments where the characters are simply talking with one another, they never feel slow and they never feel dragged out. They always feel like they're at the right lengths. I'd say my issues with the movie are solely reliant on the death of Demetrius. I just think that's a very stupid part of the movie. And the other thing is the use of green screen shots. Because while there's a couple that are seamless, the ones that are not seamless are pretty bad. There's one particular shot on Le Chiffre's yacht. We see his girlfriend enter in, and the green screen behind her, it was like watching a television sitcom. I don't know how that was approved. And also, when Bond and Vesper are in the car getting driven to the casino, that green screen is very obvious. And again, I don't know how that was approved. But apart from that, guys, this is an extremely entertaining film first and foremost. But it possesses a great story, great characters, great action set pieces, great cinematography, and it's not just a great James Bond movie, but it's a great film. So I'm going to give Casino Royale an A. So join me next week as I'll be talking about Quantum of Solace, and like Casino Royale, I do have a couple of interesting thoughts on that movie. However, I haven't seen it in ages, so maybe those interesting thoughts might not hold a candle anymore. We'll have to see upon the rewatch, but I am excited to talk about that, and of course Skyfall. I have a lot to talk about with Skyfall. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Click that like button because it always helps me to want to give you guys more content. If you want to follow me on social media, all the links are in the description box below. I also set up my new email, so if you have any business inquiries for me, you can email me. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I always love the support. I'm glad to be back. Thanks, and stay tuned.